This is episode 8 of Hoops Forum, a joint effort of Radius Athletics and a Quick Timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller, and I'm joined again this week by my co-host, Randy Sherman. As always, we want to thank our sponsors over at 323 Sports. If you're in the market for a team dealer, look no further than 323 Sports. Uniforms, team gear, spirit wear, sports equipment, they can do it all for your program. To find out more, visit 323sports.com, or you can get in contact with the sales rep, sales@323sports.com. They'll be sure to do it right for your sports team. For those who are watching live, we always love to have interaction. You can be a part of the conversation simply by replying to this tweet on Twitter. If you do that, we can incorporate your questions or your comments here into the broadcast, and we love to have you a part of our show. Let me go ahead and put this up, Randy. Today we're going to be talking zone offense tips. Several weeks ago, we talked about pressure man tips, and I just mentioned that simply because this is something that you actually talk about frequently on social media. You even have the hashtag that goes along with it. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I think I started that a long time ago, like really when I first got active sharing stuff on basketball content on social media. I used the hashtag, and I tend to use hashtags every once in a while. I'll use one as a joke or how people do, but I tend to use them actually how they're sort of supposed to be intended, as sort of like an organizing tool. So if one was to click on zone offense tips, their feed would then be populated with things they can learn about zone offense. So, and some other coaches jump on there and use it too, which I like also. So
yeah, a lot of videos. There were just some tweets about things, and then also some diagrams, and we'll incorporate some of those here into the broadcast. We always start with our poll, and each week you can find this on the Twitter account. Randy and I both put it up there. This week, a lot of response, so we're hoping that is a foretelling of the responses that we'll get during the live show and then also during the replays. But what do you run most often? I try to make sure that there's some sort of a prerequisite there when people select, because I know a lot of people will say, well, I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of this, but most often run was the key here against zone defenses. 15%, close to 15% with set plays, close to 50% with patterns, and then 36% with motion offense. We had a couple that talked about, like, yes, I do run all three, and for a lot they may doing that. Do you feel like one of those? Well, what did you run? How did you kind of approach it, Randy, when you were coaching?
I don't know which of these three categories I would put what I did most in.
I feel like sometimes it's like the situation, maybe, or obviously have a timeout.
I would say I can clearly answer no to patterns. I could clearly answer maybe to motion, but there's not much motion in what I did. I used some set plays against zone, like after timeout, or like, if we're playing a team who's like a zone team, they play zone every game out, we know what we're getting. I might use a set play after a timeout or a dead ball start to a possession or something but I don't think I would be able to accurately place what I tended to do in either of those.
I would guess that as some look at this, like they think like patterns as, yes, we do like certain actions against it that are kind of like repeating actions, but they're not necessarily like motion offense. So
I see a lot of that in when I watch the game, at all levels with the coaches I help. So that probably the winner of the poll here reflects kind of what I would think. I see, just judging on my anecdotal observations.
So let me start with this then. The number one reason why some coaches, because we had somebody reply with this, but like the number one reason why some coaches have poor, if you were to ask them, and maybe they're judging themselves too harshly, but they either have poor zone offense philosophy or no zone offense philosophy. I hear sometimes, and I know you can't actually have no philosophy, because even the philosophy is a philosophy, but like they're just like, well, we just move the ball, and sometimes it almost sounds too easy, and maybe their teams do have success, but I've tried that. It doesn't necessarily work. But what would you say maybe number one reason or primary reasons why some coaches have poor zone offense philosophy?
So you're going to do the thing to me you do in the poll and make me say one thing, right, instead of like a couple of inputs. I know the main reason the main reason why a lot of teams' zone offense is bad is shooting and passing, right? They just don't have those skills in enough abundance to really to make it work out for them. but I'll play along with your questioning style, where you try to pin me down to one thing, and I'll give you an answer that probably won't be super popular, but like I think sometimes in when I watch some zone offense, again, I know some of the things I say sound a little basketball sacrilegious or whatever, but like I sometimes think there's just too much player movement when we're attacking the zone. So that's maybe I'd use the word your zone offense is too busy. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it almost seems like
there's some other things I thought on this question last night that I was like, maybe that should be my answer, but that'd be my I'll play along with your line of questioning, and that would be my one thing.
I totally agree. I feel like sometimes coaches they almost overthink it, or there's like too much going on, and the busy is a good summarizing word for that. But like players are running, the ball sometimes even moves so quickly. There's almost two extremes. Like it almost like never moves, and everybody's saying pass the ball, move the ball, right? That's the phrase. Or it's the other way, and we're just like whipping the ball around without really accomplishing anything.
So I think talking about those two things as you have planned would be good.
All right, so let's start off then, because where does the zone offense, where should it start? And I think we actually kind of addressed this a couple of weeks ago. Pace and space is kind of the overlapping principle.
Yeah, I would say for me, I don't like to say where it should. I'm not an authority on that, but like for me, where it started, same as man-to-man offense, is alignment. So when we come down the court, whether we're playing man or zone, we want to be in our desired alignment for that context, for playing against that defense. So to me, I think I talked about this when we talked about pace and space. The phases of a possession are construct, penetrate, execute. That doesn't change against zone or man. So we want to construct, and that's alignment. So that'd be my answer.
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull this up for people. Very simple, and this is something that's age old, but I feel like sometimes it's good as a refresher or something maybe even to share with your players, because it may make sense to you, but your players, they may not quite understand what it looks like. You kind of want to walk them through these 4 slides here.
Yeah, so there's some, like I said, I would say my zone principles are really old fashioned, but like, some things don't go out of style, right? Like a well-fitted Navy suit that doesn't go out of style, right? Like there are styles, there are fads in the fashion world, but that's one thing that you'll always look good in. If it fits right and it's tailored, you're gonna look great no matter what era. So I think some of these things are timeless in a way. So so the first one you see in the top left corner would be our desired alignment with against the 2-3 zone. Basically following an age-old principle of if the zone presents an even front, which they do here, X1 and X2, that's 2 players up top, an even number, we want to present an odd front. So in one of my coaching mentors down here in Texas, in typical Texas style, used to say, get where they ain't. and that's really kind of what we're doing with this principle, is getting where they ain't. And so it begins with me with getting in the proper alignment. So once we kind of get into these spots and that you see here, we really don't change much about our alignment in that possession. The top right one, I would say, is a little bit redundant with the top left one. I included it because some coaches do tend to start two players behind the zone. And then when the ball is passed to one of the sides, a player flashes, and then it ends up looking like frame one. So, but I did want to include it because I don't really have a quarrel with that alignment either. Just know that when it's on the side, it's kind of the same thing. The bottom two would be an alignment I used. We call it dice because it looks kind of like 5 on a domino or on a dice. It looks like the number 5 when you're playing dice or dominoes. That's our alignment against an odd front zone. So you see a 1-2-2 on the left and a 1-3-1 on the right. I treated those kind of the same, with again following the principle of they present an odd front, we present an even front. get where they ain't, right? You can see where the black dots are is where the defense isn't. So get where they ain't. Pardon my grammar, but yeah, I would say that's where it begins for me. Is this just, like in football coaching, there's a term or a phrase that you hear football coaches use all the time, saying, "Don't get beat by alignment." Like, make sure we're lined up right, so we're not susceptible to getting leverage blocked or getting outflanked or something like that. So I would say, don't start with the wrong alignment. I was working with a coach the other day that I mentor in my mentoring program. We were watching his video against an odd front zone, the one you see in frame 3. And we're watching part of a quarter, and he's kind of not in what I would call, what I personally alignment I would prefer, and he's kind of struggling. And not great things are happening for his offense. And he's like, I know what you're about to say. About halfway through the quarter here, watch, I switched to this alignment. And then as soon as he did that, there started to be good diagonal passes, good one more, good relay passes. And he made 5 or 6 shots in a row off of playing diagonally against that odd front zone. So the alignment really does matter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I'm communicating this to my players as you're coaching them. I teach right now a coaching basketball class, and I've got some people in there who just haven't played that much basketball. And so I just simply say to them, like, get to an open window so that you can, if all you can see is a player in front of you, because again, this is something that makes sense to us, or the gaps on the floor make sense to us, and it should make sense to them. But you probably wouldn't be surprised how many players are literally standing either right behind or right beside a defender, and they're they think nothing of it. So get to an open window.
That sounds much more professorial than get where they ain't. So I like that. So I may commandeer that language.
All right, sounds good. Talk about the principle of distorting it, because once we align it, it's great to start in that spot, but then once we start moving, and that will transition us into player movement and ball movement.
Yeah, sometimes when you hear me talk about zone, I talk about zone in the third person, like the zone wants to, the zone wants to stay in its original form. That's what it's trying to do during the possession. So like what I would do, I sometimes would watch a film with my players, and we're in that point where maybe we're just bringing the ball up the court, and the camera's on the defense, and I pause and go, okay, what defense is that? And everyone in the room, even a novice, right, could go, okay, that's a 2-3 zone. I can clearly see that. Okay, let the frame play. And like my goal would be to my players, okay, here after a couple passes and after a little bit of ball movement and applying some of our principles, I'm going to pause this again, and I want this thing to be unidentifiable. Like what defense is it now? Like I want it to be unidentifiable. So distortion would be using passing and positioning to make the zone sort of lose its shape, make a piece of the zone get somewhere where they don't want to be, a little bit higher than they'd like to be, a little bit off center or something like that. So getting where they're not, I'll clean up my grammar. Getting where they're not kind of helps accomplish that. Mm-hmm. So the principle of distortion would mean, like if this zone still looks like a 2, 3, 5, 6 passes into our possession, we're busy, but we're not accomplishing anything. I want to make it lose its shape.
Right. Can there, as we attempt to distort the zone, what are we trying to accomplish as far as our offense goes? And then talking about player movement and appropriate player movement against the zone defense.
All right, so I'll tackle those one at a time. So with distortion, simple answer to what we're trying to accomplish is just open up a pocket of space. Just kind of open up a pocket of space that we can either already be in or move a player into to exploit that distortion. Another thing I would say would be we're trying to maybe cause some confusion between those two pieces of the zone. Like, oh, I thought you had it, because we've moved players out of those cleanly defined areas of assignment that they prefer to stay in. What was the second question? Player movement?
No, I mean that was primarily it. I think that we'll get to these eventually, but appropriate player movement as well. I'm going to actually screen a zone. It's not necessarily just running to open space. So that could be another one, screening the zone. I'd like for us to eventually get to as well, like playing behind the zone and then moving to the appropriate place, like where that actually looks, where that actually is going to. Okay, so that's player movement, and we're putting all these together at the end here.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
with player movement, what I wanted to see, well, let me tell you what I see sometimes. And the reason why, again, it sounds kind of sacrilegious sometimes because coaches sometimes feel really uncomfortable if their players aren't moving. They get all these weird things about, like, I'm afraid people are going to think my team's lazy or whatever, you know. I don't care about that. This is what I see a lot of times. It's like maybe we're in that alignment versus 2-3 with the odd front. And the three perimeter players are one of them passes off the top to a wing. The zone makes a slide according to that pass from top to wing. The guy who passed it cuts maybe through the zone or through the middle of the guards and back out, or maybe he just cuts toward that other wing, and that wing comes to the top. And there's a little bit of maybe an exchange or something like that between the two players. Well, meanwhile, the guy with the ball, and the zone has slid with the first pass. Meanwhile, the guy with the ball is waiting and holding the ball for you to pass it to the guy back up top. And we're waiting for that fill or that interchange to take. Well, we're just putting another player where we already had one. So like that movement doesn't really accomplish anything. And I was watching film recently with a coach who was just insistent that had to happen in his offense. And I was like, okay, watch the 5 defenders, watch their heads, watch their eyes, watch what happens when you pass it top to side. All 5 heads turn and look at that ball. They don't care about that. Like, that doesn't even affect them. They care about where the ball is, and that's going to position them. The pass moves them, and so just something simple as that. Like, we've got to wait. We've got to hold the ball, the slide, and we pass it once, and we pass it. Move a guy, we hold it while the defense makes a slide. Well, they get to stay in that shape.
Can there be, we talked about this at the beginning, but can there be too much ball movement? And then on the flip side of that, what's the right type of ball movement?
All right. So I'd say I do see this sometimes with zone where it looks like, because the zone is compact, the perimeter players, typically against 2-3, this happens where maybe point wing and wing are just pop, 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 pop. I call that trimming the edges, right? They're just passing the ball around top. So, and it's like they're just doing a passing drill, you know, like, and none of them there's no really attention being paid to what effect the passing is having on the pieces of the zone. So I would say, yes, there could be too much ball movement in that. Is it really accomplishing anything? So, yeah, I would say that just giving the ball exercise is not really what we're after.
All right, so then obviously the response to that is to penetrate the zone with the pass, and how to go about doing that. And we showing it here on this fast draw slide.
Yeah, there's one example. Yeah, there's one example, especially in frame 1 there.
So one of the things that I often see is we come down the floor and we throw it one time, and then we attempt to penetrate the zone
with the dribble.
With a dribble.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they'll even pass down one side. So like one with the ball will throw it down to 3, and then we try to throw it into 5, or it comes back up and then we try to throw it into 5, rather than rotating the ball to the opposite side and maybe loosening up the defense, a phrase that we've used before in here.
Yeah.
Or even going back one more time to the other side and then throwing it in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be straight into the 5, which is, I believe, what you have diagrammed here, if you want to kind of talk through this a little bit.
Yeah, so two big things that I wanted our players to understand, or really, let me start with one, was against zone. I didn't want to coach it at the fill in the blank or multiple choice question level of teaching, right? I'm teaching the essay question level of teaching. So what I wanted our players to understand, number one thing is know who's guarding you and know where they came from. So I would like to be able to answer a player, pause it on film, or during the timeout go, okay, when we pass it to you in the corner, or when you've got the ball on the wing, who's guarding you? And don't tell me their jersey number, like number 12, right? But like, don't tell me it's the forward. The forward's guarding me. The guard is guarding me. The center is guarding me. I want you to know who's guarding you and know where they came from, because then now we got some intel. Okay, when we pass to the wing, the forward comes up and plays the wing, and now we got space behind the zone to overload it to the, like, all right, thank you. You're giving me help here. Like, know who's guarding you, know where they came from. So like in frame 1 here would be an example of playing diagonally. A big time principle against odd front zones. We want to. It's kind of really hard to trim the edges against these odd front zones because there's a player kind of between you and the next player over. There's a player between 1 and 4. Again, we like them to be where they're not 3 in a row, but sometimes with good wingspan or active player, that's a little bit risky. So we tend to have to play diagonally. I think the odd front zones make you do that a little bit more than the even front zones play diagonally. So you see a diagonal skip from slot to corner. That kind of speeds up the slides of the zone. We skipped a player. We didn't trim an edge, and the zone can't slide 1 slide at a time. Now they got to make 2 slides. And we got to close out the play against when it hit X2's hands, right? So someone's running at them because of the skip, the ball speed. That's definitely possible that we're able to drive that player. But also what we did by passing like that is we move X4 out. So our positioning, which didn't really change much, for me, once we got our 4 basket facing players in position, they didn't really move much. So our positioning, and then combined with our passing, distorted the zone such that now it's going to end up looking like a 2-3. X4 is going to come out and close out on 2. I want 5 to dive right off the nail and try to beat X5, who's got to rotate over to the ball side. And I think the word, you probably can't see it there, is relay. We call that a relay password. Just it hits two's hands and pop. Just almost like in billiards, you bounce the ball off the rail to make it go in the hole in the pocket you want. You could tell I don't play pool, but yeah. So it's like I'm throwing it to 2 to get it to 5. So if I can't get you the ball, who can? That's another sound bite I would throw out there. If I can't get you the ball, who can? So we can't penetrate the pass 1 to 5. I can play it off the rail to 2, relay it into 5, diving off the nail before X5 can cut over there. X3 would have to drop. Now it looks like a 2-3. So we've distorted the zone. So the positioning and passing created a pocket of space that we cut into. That's the kind of ball and player movement that I'm after. Is use our positioning, use our passing to manipulate the zone to where now we can cut into a void.
One of the things that I also like that you have emphasized is something other than just straight cuts. I run in a straight line behind the zone. I run diagonally to the ball. And this slide shows that the use of player movement and ball movement through shallow cuts. And then also even potentially we can transition into talking about like screening the zone too. But talking through the shallow cut, very simple way to create some movement and to create those top defenders, especially being worried about what's happening behind them, which can actually cause them to distort the zone.
Absolutely.
And then for you to attack it that way too. So if you want to talk through this.
So I spent the first minute here talking big about how we don't move against the zone, and then now I'm showing some movement against the zone. But let me try to draw a distinction there. For me, if we're just passing, my basket-facing players at least aren't really moving that much. They're maybe making slight micro adjustments to stay in windows between pieces of the zone, a couple feet right or left or back or forward or something like that. But once we dribble at a player, then I do want to move, because remember, we want to keep this shape. This is the desired alignment, odd front against an even front. So if I'm dribbled at, we run, especially off the top, we call that a shallow. So you see in frame 1, dribbling at 2, he's going to shallow. I want him to cut shallow underneath the elbow and between the 2 guards to basically replace where player 1 was. So we dribble off the top. One's dribbling with their left hand at player 2. He shallow cuts through the underneath the elbow back to the top, and we're going to play against the grain. Another principle. So with the zone is moving this way when we dribble, and then we throw back that way. against the grain is another great principle, playing against the grain. So we move them with the dribble that way, throw that way, and that's going to draw X2 up, right? And then we just immediately play it to the second side. That's that ergo, because X2 was drawn up on that shallow cut, ergo the forward has to live, and now we've expanded some space to either play to the short or deep corner by lifting the forward. Another principle, lifting the forward, is another one of my sound bites, especially against 2-3. That's our mission, man. Lift that forward, and if we've got short corner or deep corner range with our guy playing behind the zone, let's get the ball into that space.
Let me go ahead and pull that one up too. This one may help you kind of explain the lifting the forwards and then also the playing behind the zone as well.
Yeah, so what you see in yellow there are what we call passing windows. So if we're going to penetrate with the pass, I wanted our players to be positioned in those passing windows relative to the two pieces of the zone in front of them, and think a pass ahead, meaning like if one passes to two is already thinking before they catch, not catch and evaluate then catch. That hey, as soon as this ball touches my hand, I might be able to relay it through my passing window into 4, into the high post, if they'll kind of move their space. So what you see a lot of times against zone, it's catch, put it over my head, evaluate, too late. The zone makes it slide. They're doing their coverage. So I've got to evaluate before the catch it, and trust my throw. Like, that's quarterback coaching. Just see it, trust your throw. So playing behind the zone is another good principle. One thing we said is I don't want all 5 of their defenders to be able to look at their rim, the one on the other end of the court, and see all 5 of us. So when the deepest man in the zone is looking at his rim back toward us, this end of the court, he can only see 4 of us, maybe 3 of us if we're 2 behind, right? But I don't want them to be able to see all 5 of us. So there's what that does is it makes X5 a little bit skittish. Sometimes they want to help. If you're all 5 above the deepest man, they'll come on up and they maybe squeeze some of that space that you're trying to enter into the high post. They'll squeeze some of that space because there's no threat behind them. And when there's someone behind them, you'll see them kind of like looking over their shoulder like this, like, okay. Mm-hmm. And then that makes them sink a little bit. And there we've got a little bit better pocket of space to enter it in through one of the windows to player 4 in the high post.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about like screening the zone and some of the techniques to use, not just randomly screening, but it could be a pattern that we use or where exactly to screen the zone in order to get effective offense. Any thoughts with that?
Yeah, screening to me is just another tool of distortion. So what we're trying to do when we screen a piece of the zone, we're trying to screen them so they can't cover who they want, and someone else has to. So I use a little bit of flare screening against a zone. So we might dribble if the ball's on the wing, say a 2-3 zone, ball's on the wing, guy's on the top. The guy on the wing dribbles at the guy on the point. The other wing flare screens one of the guards, and we throw it. And now we've lifted the forward, and we're back to where we were in that other frame. We've lifted the forward. We've caused some distortion. We've opened the space. So to me, I would just, if you're viewing screening against a zone, do it for distortion purposes, like mm-hmm. to seal a piece of the zone and make another piece have to come play the ball where they don't want to.
And I'll put it another way. A lot of times we were just creating an outnumbered scenario. So 2 defenders guarding 3 or 1 defender guarding 2, putting a guy on an island, making him choose whether or not he wants to take away the penetration or take away the pass. And I know coaches love plays. This is one that went around the internet several times. We even have video of it. I'll show you in just a few seconds here. But not just screening like with a ball screen, although you can use a spread ball screen. So use a spread ball screen, overload a side, dribble to that side, then you're going to end up with 2 guarding 1 guarding 2 on that side, but also screening with multiple players at multiple times. This was one from the Jazz, and they used it. This was Quinn Snyder. This one was a little bit earlier this year, I think. But you have your 2 wings coming and screening on the inside, dribbling down the middle, and now you have basically you're putting X3. Is he going to guard the 5 or is he going to guard the 2? So you'll have 1 guarding 2 on that side. We have video of it. Let me pull it up here.
It may not be the video may not look exactly like this, but you'll see the similarity. There's like a little pause at the beginning. Don't worry, it works. Yeah. Okay, there you go. So there's the two screens, penetrate, thrown to the player behind the zone. The thing I like about that particular play is it make, again, there's the principle of if you look at the diagram again, or even the video, there's a player behind the zone. And when that guy's driving through that gap, the center is like, okay, do I go stop this guy from shooting a mid-range pull up at the bottom of the dots there, or do I sink back and take away this lob? So he's kind of in a bind. So again, that player behind the zone makes some indecision for that center of the zone there when we basically block for the guy penetrating with the dribble. The center has to, okay, am I going to stop this jump shot right here in the middle of the lane? By doing so, I give up the lob. If I sink on the lob, I'm going to give up a stop and pop at the bottom of the dotted circle right there.
Both of these are on the Fast Model Play Bank. You can download those, or you can contact me, and I can shoot those over to you.
And that video's on my YouTube page. So
the video's on Randy's YouTube page. Here's another one. I like screening the bottom inside of the zone to give you a look for your big man. So this one, you actually have two screens here, but one passes over to four throws it one more down, then go and screen the bottom outside. And so now you're putting them on a decision making. Does two guard the four or the two, and then swing it over one, and then screen with five the inside. So have five just come up, turn around, seal, and then four kind of over the top there, and you have a bucket where you have X4 now. They have to decide, do I want to guard three or do I want to guard four as they flash across the middle? So just that principle of kind of outnumbering the zone.
Yeah, I like that one. Let me tell you why I like that one, because I see so many. And then even when I listen to myself, some of my answers when coaches ask me about, some help with zone and stuff is really 3-point shooting dependent, right? Like my answer, what I give them is a play or an idea that generally results in an open three. But really, like, if you really want to piss off a zone coach, get some good twos, right? Yeah. Like if you get some good twos, like then that's when they're going to call timeout and be like, this sucks. This isn't working. This is a good example of that. Like how when five cracks in on X5 and you got four cutting through there, that could create a good two. Yeah. And that's when you see zone coaches get really big mad.
Right.
Yeah.
So follow #Zone Offense Tips on Twitter, and you'll find a lot of the things that we talked about and then some additional things here. We're not finished yet, simply because every time I get a zone offense tip, somebody always wants to talk junk defense. So we're going to just briefly talk junk defense here. This is Randy's favorite topic. This is our segment called Beyond the Scoreboard, presented by Sideline Interactive. You may be wanting to increase your revenue for your program or improve the fan experience at your sporting events, or maybe it's just time to replace those scoreboards from the 1980s. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for scoring tables and video display boards for high school and colleges around the country. To find out more about Sideline Interactive, visit sidelineinteractive.com. All right, Randy, here it is. Here's our one scenario here, Beyond the Scoreboard, talking about the whys, not just, oh, well, I'd do this and it would fix all the problems here. Your team is up 10, and your all-region player already has 15 points in the first half. Out of a timeout, your team comes out, and you see that the team is now that you're playing against is now facing or going against you in a 1-on-1. What adjustments do you make?
So they came out in a 1-on-1.
1-on-1.
On my best player.
Best player.
Man, I'm terrible at these.
Here's something that the coaches never give me enough information when they ask me this. I always get this sense like your one player is the only dude who can pass, dribble, and shoot. So now all your other players are incompetent and rendered useless the rest of the game. And I know that's not the case, but it feels sometimes like that's how they're treating it. And so it's like, what do we do to get our one guy back open again?
Yeah.
If that's the case, we've talked about that, then you probably need to improve as a coach.
I think there's two ways to help the coach in that regard, or help your team in that regard. Is like, is the answer that Randy's about to give going to be something to get my player that they're wanting, like that they're covering, involved, or is it something to get shots for the ones that they're choosing to not do that to? I'm with you. I'll just, again, I know you want these to be punchy, so I would say my first adjustment would have to do with alignment, and that would be we're going to put 3 on the baseline. We're going to outnumber them along the baseline with three players that they're not face guarding, 3 of the non-face guarded players, and just sort of try to play with that outnumbering along the baseline. Can we stretch them to make them have to guard the deep corner with it? Hopefully I've got another player that can at least look like he or she might make a shot from the deep corner, right? And so 3 along the baseline. I know you like these to be shorty and punchy, so there's my answer. I'm definitely putting 3 along the baseline.
I will have some coaches that say they just continue to run their zone offense, and I think that does kind of assume that the rest of your players can still play as well. Instead of just totally focusing in on your one player, then you're kind of just playing into their hands. But so I'll attempt to help here.
Okay.
These are the ones that as soon as a coach asks me about this, I just go straight to these. And I'll just send them these 3. Sometimes, maybe more of a quick hitter, but other times, again, that idea of trying to outnumber certain defenders on the floor. And so 4 flashing to the middle, it's kind of your principle, because I'm getting 2-3 on the baseline.
Yeah, and also you're distorting. You're making X4. They want to guard blocks and elbows. You're making somebody you're distorting that and then cutting behind into that space that you manipulated through distortion.
So I've got my 2s, that my person being boxed in 1 there, and then you have, like we said, you're distorting it by putting 3 behind the zone. Here's the second one that I'll do. So again, 2 is your player that's being manned up there, but throwing down, going flashing with your 3 behind the zone is always a great principle. So you're occupying the X4, who usually would take away that middle flash there with the 4. And so when 3 cuts to the middle, 5 throw it to 3. I would assume that X4 would jump up, and then you have kind of a little dump off pocket pass down to the 4 on the baseline. So there's another one there. And then the third one I have here, if you're point guard, you can put your primary defend or primary person player up at the top there, screen the outside of the zone, send those guys down the side, and you'll have wide open shots in the corner. I'm not sure I'd go to that like repeatedly unless you're a phenomenal 3-point shooting team. But at least an option.
Yeah, so all 3 of your answers, some coaches don't like, because they all ask someone else other than their player to make a play. So what I always try to be as a counselor to coaches is like, I don't fix problems. Let's fix the problem that caused the problem. Why would anyone look at your team and go, boxing 1's a good idea against these guys? Right. Like that's what I'm. But that doesn't help me in the moment, right? Like that's more of like a long-term answer. So I get that. I get why that's not the best. That's like, who's this guy? Like, I mean, he didn't help me solve my problem. Scroll past him, right? Like I get that. But
that's why Randy and I right now are the perfect yin and yang. Randy will tell you need to get better in the long. I'll just throw a Band-Aid over it for the time.
There you go. That's what I need, man.
If you need a Band-Aid, just shoot me.
I liked all of those.
Yeah, those were good.
And so I would never even take the time to do it, but
I can send those, share those with anybody. So if you need those, just reach out, and I'm more than happy to send those to you. So appreciate all of those who joined us this week. And if you missed any part of the show, you can always go back and watch the full episodes on Radius Athletics YouTube page. And you'll see the full interviews in video form, or you can wait a week from today. I'll be posting this on a Quick Timeout podcast. You can find the full audio for the show as well. For Randy Sherman, I'm Tony Miller. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week on Hoops Forum.